JD Vance is an exceptional code switcher among different white people, cultures, and dialects. Listen as they talk here. The way that, if you've listened to Knowles before, you know the dude is a firecracker. He's sharp as hell. And watch how Vance just effortlessly talks on the same like philosophical, theological level as him, and he's doing it like authentically. This is just an environment that he's totally happy to be in. The what would you call it? Like the sort of institutional, philosophical, foundations where they're talking deep philosophy, that sort of thing. Like, he's perfectly at home in that environment. He's also perfectly at home, like on the street, just like chatting with people. He's also perfectly at home in like the VC world, talking business and economics, and he could speak any I keep wanting to say right wing. He can speak any white dialect that exists.
What you value. Okay, back to the vice president.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for doing this. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming to DC. I know we had planned to schedule this last week, I believe, and I had to go to Switzerland, so thank you for being
I will never forgive the Iranians for doing that to me, right. But we're here now.
We're the Swiss. But, okay, before you get into the why Catholicism, I think you have to get into the why Christianity, then not Christianity, then back to Christianity, and then get there. So let me give like the 90-second summary of my faith journey from when I was a kid until I was 24, 25. So basically raised in an evangelical household, raised by my grandmother, but with like a lot of Pentecostal flavor from my biological father. Basically unchurched. I would go to church with my dad, my stepmom sometimes, but mainly it was with my grandma. We would watch TBN, we'd watch Paul and Jane Crouch, we'd watch Billy Graham revivals. And I realized after my grandmother died, this is when I was 21 years old, maybe 20, but right before I left for Iraq in 2005, Mamaw died. And I realized that was my connection to Christianity. So there was no institutional connection. And that's sort of one of the subtexts of the book, is trying to raise my own kids in a more institutional faith and the hope that it takes in a way that I didn't. Because 2 years after my grandmother was dead, I called myself an atheist.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm an atheist. I become, and maybe I always was, a striver. I'm obsessed with achievement for achievement's sake. And
really, Mr. Vice President? Shocked to hear it.
Yeah. And I get to.
This is a very interesting thing for someone in Vance's position to readily admit. And he's said this in most of these interviews that he's done. He said it on The View. He said it with Bill Maher, describing himself as someone who recognizes that he is motivated by striving. Like there's the striver class that is something he naturally fits into, and he is motivated by this desire for achievement's sake. That's a very interesting thing to just publicly admit and lean into, because it could easily be used as an attack line. Like, he's not sincere, he's just like thirsty for power. He's the aspiring fascist who just wants power to crush people, which is why I would vote for him. But it's a very interesting thing for him to just readily admit that openly and embrace it. It's actually a major power move in itself.
I get to law school, and I'm at Yale, and I realized that I've like won all these competitions, the meritocratic competitions that life had told me to win, but I found them deeply unfulfilling. And frankly, I found that I was becoming a shitty person in the process, or a bad person, excuse me, if you have to edit that out. I don't know, what are the rules on
We never go blue on this show. We make exceptions for top government officials.
Okay, I have terrible language, as I talk about in the book. One of my many non-Christian, or one of my many traits I have to work on as a Christian. Okay, so.
Even something like, you can hear this in his talking, where he says, one of my non-Christian, and then he kind of hesitates because he's like, I don't want to say that the use of profanity is itself non-Christian per se. It's that it's a trait that I have to work on. It's something that I need to get better at. And cheeky.
Happy America Month. Thank you for all your Trustin Bubby Kissy Face.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Dale, for the kissy face. Thank you, Cheeky. So just, you can hear, like, as he's talking, you can hear his brain working. He starts to say something. He's like, no, that's not quite what I want to say, and he modifies it. So he says first he says it's one of my unchristian traits, but it's not an unchristian trait to swear, to use profanity. But using it inappropriately or excessively, then that's a thing then that as a Christian, it's something you have to work on. And which also sort of, maybe I'm a little biased here, but There's a level of theological sophistication, I think, that's implied by him doing this in real time as he's talking.
The non-Christian, or one of my many traits I have to work on as a Christian. Okay, so I am at law school. I'm doing very well in sort of all the worldly things. I'm doing not so well in the non-worldly things. I fall in love. That woman is now the second lady and soon to be mother of 4 Vance children, currently the mother of 3 Vance children. And I sort of realized like everything I've geared my life towards over the last few years is hollow. But this person I'm in love with, she really wants me to be a good husband, eventually a good father. She wants me to care about virtue, being a good human being in like the deepest sense of the word. And I kept on returning to this idea that the elites who fashioned themselves hyper-rational, they didn't believe in superstitious things like Jesus Christ is the Son of God. They were the ones who seemed to be the least focused on what mattered, the least focused on what mattered. Yeah. And meanwhile, it was all these sort of bumpkins that I dismissed as sub-rational, as superstitious, who seemed to have things figured out in a much deeper way. So that leads me down the pathway back to Christianity. And I think that
the bumpkins I dismissed as sub-rational. It continually, every time I listen to him, it just blows my mind that we have a guy like this who's not just in a position of extraordinary political power, but is clearly lined up as the heir apparent for the presidency. Who is he's me. He's just I've never identified with a public figure more than I do with JD Vance, and he's a fucking vice president.
I think that was almost 90 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, but okay, then it's like, how do you become a Christian in this world? And there are all of these things that attracted me to Catholicism. So number one, I really liked the sense that it was institutionally stable, okay? And again, going back to my unchurched upbringing, when things were going well in my religious life, it was very much attached to like a single individual, whether it was my grandmother or a pastor, and sometimes the pastors would come and go. I was really attracted to the idea that like in this church, the mass was more or less the same, whether you were on vacation in some faraway country or whether you were in suburban Cincinnati. But I also like doctrinally that, like things didn't change based on who the person giving the homily was. And that sense of stability, the idea that Christian doctrine was fundamentally founded on Jesus Christ and the church beyond that if it really is founded on Jesus Christ, it shouldn't change. Now, of course, it's going to have to apply itself to new circumstances. When Jesus Christ died and rose from the dead, we didn't have automobiles. We didn't have, modern narcotics. We didn't have a lot of the things that they were dealing with at the time. But the principle is fundamentally immovable. And then there's an open question about how you apply the principle to new things.
Living Dead says, once again, no admin has ever said Christ is the Son of God and stated that as plain truth more than this one. How can you blackpill? Yet more evidence that blackpilling is spiritual bankruptcy. It works both directions. When you blackpill, you bankrupt yourself spiritually. And the act of blackpilling, the decision to blackpill, is born out of spiritual bankruptcy, a lack of spiritual sensitivity. You can't perceive these sorts of things and recognize the significance or the import of them.
And then the final thing I'd say is, and then we can, I'm sure, go into the details. I'm trying to summarize this very quickly because I know we only have an hour. But there is something about the connection between the past, the present, and the future that I really liked about the Catholic Church. This idea that you had your role to play, whether it was a big role or a small role in the life of the church. You were inheriting that from thousands of years of history, and you would eventually die and hopefully be rejoined with the Lord. And you would pass on that legacy to some other person who would then carry it on after you. Right. That continuity across the generations I found very, very attractive. And one of the things I write about in the book is that sort of one of these existential fears that animate me. I've never been particularly afraid of dying. Mm-hmm. It's funny when we had this sort of situation at the Willard Hotel, or no, we're in the Willard Hotel right now.
Currently.
Where was the White House Correspondents Association dinner? Anyway, there was the assassination.
It was at the Hilton, maybe?
Yeah, wherever it was. And it was obviously focused on the president, but you hear loud noises and then the guys with the machine guns run in and you're kind of like, oh, something kind of crazy is going on. The idea of dying doesn't really scare me. It's never scared me, whether as an atheist or as a Christian. And I talk about that a little bit in the book, Communion, you should buy it, that I've always been somewhat troubled by that because, if you think potentially hell is waiting you on the other end, shouldn't you be really afraid of it? But I've just never been afraid of dying. What I have been afraid of, and there's this existential dread that kind of animates me, we haven't gotten into this in any of the interviews that I've done, but I guess we can get into it here, is this idea that the continuity across generations is going to stop with us.
Yeah.
that we inherited something, and instead of building upon it and passing it on, it's just going to die with us.
You see it decay.
Feeling of decay and of stasis rather than dynamism and growth. And that
decay and stasis versus dynamism and growth. This is Mark Andreessen's ears are tickling when he hears lines like that. Like, I could tell JD Vance could jump into a King Pill Discord voice chat, and sit there and just like would be interested in talking about the things that we're interested in talking about. Has gone through many of the same experiences and thought through many of the same things and shares like all of the same values. And not just that, he's willing to authentically communicate all of this in the position that he's in, and does so entirely naturally and compellingly and humbly. It's just, we are so blessed, boys. Let me see if I can find this real quick, actually. I don't know if, is Miranchuk still in the YouTube chat? Oh, I clicked away from it, so I wouldn't even know. Oh yeah, he says, I knew JD was a great communicator, but these last few interviews have been masterclasses. Yes. He said the other day, we were talking about something, and he said, my only real complaint about Americans is that you lot are so damn spoiled that any American self-hatred really turns my stomach. It's literally, my lobster is too buttery, my steak is too rich. So true. We are so incredibly blessed. And it is a sin against the world for Americans to engage in self-hatred. For Americans to talk about the evil of America and be embarrassed about being American, or forecast doom for America. It is a sin of despair. Amy says, imagine JD listening to a Magoo story. Magoo! Or arguing with Hines. Or being called a nigger by Mr. Sue. If that's not an advertisement for the King Pill Discord, I don't know what is. Kingpill.com, you got to come join us. We'll have a voice chat tomorrow evening, of course, so make sure you join in time for that. Or him laughing at the soundboard noises, yeah. Nut.
I fucking love trains!
I felt like the Catholicism's continuity was in some ways an antidote to that, because it's, there are certainly things you can look at our world. I think there are things you can look at and be very hopeful about. There are things you can look at in our modern world and be very despairing about. But if you look at the long history of the Christian faith, it's very hard not to say that many, many other people in many, many generations past had it far worse than we did.
Yes.
And
so
that
true.
gives me a certain sense of, okay, like maybe we should stop whining and try to build something rather than just complain about how bad things are for us right now.
Right.
Stop whining and try to build something instead of complaining about how bad things are. Just straight to the soul. Living Dead says JD is literally the amalgamation of our guy. If we could mash all of the best elements into a personable ball and then have it sculpted into final form by the best, most relatable PR team in history.